do it again.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to God's Favorite Sinners. I'm Lauren Trotter.
I'm Justin Hodak.
I'm Vlad Kochergin.
There you go.
Word.
Why are you all like somber today?
Who,
What's
me?
happening? Yeah, you.
It's the weather.
That was straight up like.
This is just.
It's the weather. I cannot. I hate rainy day schedules.
God, I love it.
I hate it. I hate it. What were you saying last night when we were at the meeting? Low pressure systems.
Yeah.
That's like real.
I don't know. It works for me.
Well, it does not work for me.
All right, what's happening with you? How's life? What's going on?
I have no complaints.
Well, that's nice.
Yeah, I got none.
I like it.
I'm like in the ease and comfort of letting the Lord do my work.
That's amazing.
I'm not forcing anything.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like retracting energy when it needs to be retracted.
That's good.
Like I cease fighting everything and everyone. Although I almost got in an altercation like yesterday.
Why?
I don't even want to talk about it on camera. It was all bad. Dude. All bad.
Well, what was the end
Just,
like situation, and what kept you from losing your cool? Let's do it that
Oh,
way.
I lost my cool.
Oh, okay.
Oh yeah.
So, and then what happened?
A homeless man almost got beat up.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
We're being opposed people. This is not this is not good at all.
At all.
Okay, so how do you refrain from doing that?
The big brother showed up and was just like, "Yo, OG."
God sometimes comes in the weirdest forms.
Of a big black man.
All right, so he came in and rescued you from yourself. That's good. That's good. And how did you feel about it after the fact?
Well, I'm like, fuck, I felt horrible.
Yeah.
And I said I should get this guy something to eat. And then I thought to myself, but we don't reward bad behavior.
Oh. So it's about his behavior, not your behavior.
It was, yeah, well, I allowed his behavior to trigger my behavior.
Right.
Okay, so here's what happened.
Oh, so here we go. I knew it was coming. We're going to get there eventually.
It's a good story.
Well, but here's the thing
no, but
about
this is me in a nutshell. I want you to hear the story because this is me in a nutshell.
Let's go.
Now, I have my car.
Yes.
Which I love my car.
Yes.
Right? And I like to drive mine. It's a fancy car.
Yes.
And I love it. And
Some would call it an idol.
Huh?
Some would even call it an idol for you.
An idol?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's
and
definitely
symbolic of who you believe you are.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. A lot of times we talk about Hodak versus Justin.
Yeah.
This is the Hodak mobile.
It is definitely. What did you call it the other day? The fucking
The eternal fuckboy car.
Pretty much. This is totally his alter identity car, and there's a lot mixed up in it.
So, on the other side of that.
And by the way,
no,
this is the new one.
Get to interrupt.
But wait, this is the new one.
Yes,
because we totaled the last one and had to
go
go buy a new one.
Had to go buy a new
because
one.
there was a malfunction with not having the car, so we now have part 2 of the fuckboy car. Just needed to bring that out. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh,
However,
any
let's
napkins?
just drink the shit
Okay,
real.
so this is funny because this is a story about the dichotomy, right?
Yes.
So, in my car,
Yes.
I always make sure that I give back, right? And I keep money. Whoever watching, do not rob me once I tell you this. Right? I always keep money in the console, right? Like if I buy something, I keep like a lot of singles in there for
Singles, not hundreds. Just saying.
Singles, right? Like the change. Like if I buy something at a drive-thru, I throw the money in the thing because of the fact that in case I see a homeless person on the side of the road, like I always want to give back because I know where I came from.
Yeah.
Right? And I do this, I do it when it's, you hate to use the term convenient, but like if the green light, like if I pull up to like a turn and there's a dude on the side of the road, like I make sure to always give him, a dude or a woman, I make sure to always give him $1 or $2. And, if the light's green, then I don't block the traffic to do it.
Yeah.
Let's be clear.
Yeah.
Right? So I pull up and I see this guy and his leg's all fucked up. And I'm like, man, I'm gonna hook this dude up. Right? So I go in the thing. I got my top down. Right? Because the rain had stopped for a few minutes. And I go in the thing to give him money. There's no money in there. Because the car's new.
Yeah.
It has, we haven't replenished. Right?
Haven't got to change yet.
We haven't hit enough drive-thrus yet.
Yes.
Right? Just fucking, it's always good to pull up in a Mercedes at McDonald's, right? Yeah. So there's no money in the thing, so I'm like, fuck. And I'm really, I'm like thinking about it, I'm like really disappointed because this dude's leg is 50 shades of fucked up.
Yeah.
So on the fucking right, I hear this dude. What's up, fucking Mr. High Roller? The fucking guy's leg is fucked up. Give him some fucking money. And I was like, hey, dude, I'm like, check this out. Like, I always give people money and da-da-da-da-da. Fuck you, you fucking rich fat. Fuck, that was it. That was it. That was it. He's a stoggy little varmint.
I know exactly who we're talking about because it's down the street from here.
Yeah, the pirate. The fucking pirate.
I know. Yeah.
And so I pull up alongside of him, and I'm like, let me spit at you real quick, homeboy. It's like, you don't get to call me names. I go, I don't know you. You don't know me. I used to be fucking homeless. I used to post a shopping cart, and I fucking give money every time I can. And this little fucking fucker doubled down. He's all, well, you ain't fucking like that now, you fucking fat. I will fucking murder you. I will fucking, right? So then he starts to back up. He's like, oh shit, my fucking mouth wrote a check that my ass can't cash. And I'm about to hand you some, bro. About to fucking hand you some. And so he's fucking like screaming. I'm like, don't you ever fucking disrespect me when you see me. I go, I fucking give money everywhere I fucking can. You know nothing about me. Fuck you. And then this dude comes up, big brother, right? I think he works for the city, right? And he gets out of the car, and you know me, like when I'm in tunnel vision, I don't see nothing, right? I see fucking Target, and that's it. And I hear, yo, OG, go, you can't calm down. And I was like, fucking, I'm all, no, fuck this guy. And then he was just like, and then the dude fucking goes, why you gotta be out here bothering people, man? He goes, I know you stay right there behind the dumpster. I'm going to go and get all your stuff and take. And the guy starts freaking out. No, you're not. I'm like, yeah, man, fuck him. Take his fucking shit. Right? And then I thought, that's all that dude has. And I was just like, don't take his stuff, bro. Like, just fuck this dude. I'm going to fucking leave. Like, this guy fucking sucks. I'm just fucking. And then I left and I was like upset. I was like, and I told myself in the car, I'm like, that was not very godly.
No, and so here's the thing, right? Is that's the reaction instead of responding, right? And there's that afterthought, and that's the thing. Like, where do we get that pause before that moment?
That's the thing. So I go, that wasn't very godly, and now I'm feeling terrible, right? Now the remorse is setting in, and that's when I go, maybe I should go get him something to eat, and then I go, no, because we don't reward bad behavior. We don't reward bad behavior. That's like a child throwing a fucking tantrum. And then you fucking snap on the child, and then you feel bad, and then you give in and reward the bad behavior. I'm like, I'm not fucking rewarding the bad behavior. So I said, hey, God, I will try to do better next time. Why are you putting these varmints in my path?
And, okay, so, like, all right. So I'm glad you didn't beat up the homeless guy. That's very nice of you.
That's terrible. Like, I would have fucking felt bad.
It's so interesting, though, right? Because all I was thinking throughout that whole thing, right, is there's always that moment of responding versus reacting, right? And I'm extremely reactive by nature. I am the, like, I'm going to stab you in the throat. Like, that's pretty much my inclination. And I've talked about this. Like, I am not naturally very patient. I naturally think a lot of people are idiots. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's kind of, like, ingrained in me. I also come from a family where respect is extremely important, right? And I come from that old school gangster stuff. Of like, you're gonna respect me or I'm gonna teach you to fucking respect me. Do you know what I mean? And like, let's not get it twisted. And I say this all the time. Like, I'm super spiritual, but don't get confused. There is a gangster inside that is no joke. But, however, right? So part of the like growing spiritually and mentally and emotionally and all of that stuff comes with that pause button, right? And that, like we were talking before the podcast started, right? Like, we're all ingrained with that good and bad, right and wrong instinct. And it's that giving that space for that little tiny gap, you know, that God in the pause thing is really true that people talk about. Because it's in that moment, like, there's a choice, right? And after, there's always the ramifications of what happens after, and it's got nothing to do with him, right?
Well, that's the fucked up part, right? And I was just like,
it hurts.
I was sitting at the light, and I was like, that light just takes a little too fucking long.
It's the light's fault.
That light just took a little too fucking long, right? The light just took a little, like, I was like letting it fucking go.
Yeah.
I was like, all right, And the dude doubled down. He's like, I see you're 50 and I raise you fucking 200. And I'm like,
but the biggest thing is we don't have any control over how anyone else behaves. The only thing we have control over is
I
ourselves.
get that. But you know my motto, trust in God, carry a gun.
Yes, except for yours is also like react and ask for forgiveness after, right? So it's like, how do we back it up so that we can have that pause? And you had two different moments in there. So you have the moment before it all happened, where you had a choice. Second, he called you out, you could have just waited for the green light, breathed through that one, and kept on going with your day.
See, that's my
or
ego.
bust a right.
Nah.
And that's what I was going to say, right?
That's
but
my
that
ego.
comes from that old school gangster mentality, though, right? You're not going to disrespect me. You're not going to call me out. And you don't know who the fuck I am, right? Because that's a lot of times where you hit all my fears and insecurities and all that stuff is by disrespecting me and not acknowledging who I think I am, right? Or like disrespecting that piece of me is where that kicks that up. So you had that momentary pause in there where you had the choice, right? And then by the time you get over there, you had also other moments throughout there, right, where you could have left, and then the guy comes and then you leave, and then you even have another moment there. And there's two ways of thinking of that moment when you left about whether or not to give him food, right? One is I don't support bad behavior or whatever, reward bad behavior, but there's also the going back and overriding my own ego and self-esteem and all of that stuff and making it right. Now, that doesn't mean that you're rewarding bad behavior either, because it's not about him, right? So that's the thing that I always need to be aware of is like, how do I make this right with me so that I go to bed at night comfortable, and where every time I stop at that light, it's not going to re-trigger that. So what
But
you
dude,
gotta
that's the
see
thing is like,
that.
okay, so I hear that, and
Yeah.
I'm not discrediting everything that you say, right? But like, I like make it a point, like whenever I stop and I see somebody on the side of the road, to give that fucking homeless person a fucking dollar. Like,
Right.
not just that, and I don't tell the people homeless or you that, so you think
Yeah.
that I'm a great fucking guy,
Right.
right? Because I'm not. I'm just a
Right.
piece of shit on a fucking weekend pass, right?
Yeah.
And like, the other things that I do in my life that fucking I'm like good, and to have this fucking varmint like fucking call me out, like it irked me.
So
Because
here's
I'm
what we're
just
gonna
like,
do,
what?
because this is what you and I talk about a lot, is the more that you believe
Varmint.
that you are worthwhile and that you are worth it and like you are worthy of, and like know who you are, like in yourself and in God and grounded,
But I
you
do that.
not have to justify who you are to anybody.
But I do that in other aspects of my life, like that we've
Correct.
talked about, right? Not
Yeah.
when I'm being like verbally or physically assaulted, like that triggers something in
Yeah.
me, like here, like in
Right.
that midbrain,
Yeah.
like I will fucking bite your face.
Right. But you're the one who'll go to prison
Mm.
based on your actions. He'll be laughing in the tent.
No, he'll be there happy that he's got 3 hots and a cop.
But do you see what I'm saying? Like the thing is though,
He
our
looked like
actions,
he looked like a laugher pirate.
I mean, but what I'm saying
you know
is,
exactly
like,
what I'm talking about.
yeah, I do. But what I'm saying is, like, our actions only actually affect us, right? That's the same as that old saying, like, I'm gonna feed you, I'm gonna drink the poison and wait for you to die.
Yeah.
That's that same thing. What you did has no bearing in his life. He actually enjoyed it, I'm sure, immensely because he got you so riled up. That's actually the win.
He was actually terrified.
He won.
He was terrified.
But he won.
He didn't win.
But
If you tell
in
me
the
he won
game,
one more time, I'm gonna leave here
I-
and fucking him in the head with a fucking bat.
But you see what I'm saying? Because it didn't affect him, right? But you're the one who actually had suffered all the consequences.
Yeah.
Because you felt like terrible afterwards.
Yeah, I
Do you
did.
know what I mean? And it kicks up all that stuff. And like, who are you trying to prove yourself to?
A varmint.
Do you see what I'm saying? Like,
Yourself.
yeah, like that's the thing is I'm needing to yell louder and louder so you know who I am, because I'm having a problem believing that that's who I am. Because with me and where I am currently in my life, it's going to take an awful lot to get me to pull my car over and start yelling and getting crazy. Do you know what I mean? Because I have done it enough times and I've and suffered those consequences enough to know that that is not worth it. You're not
And that's the
worth
thing.
me letting go of my serenity and peace.
And that's the thing
for
is
that.
like my week has been like like peaceful. Other than that, like going with the flow and da 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 da. Like him and I got things going on and we're cool. And we discuss it like adults. And you know, I got other situations in my life where I'm like, oh, it's cool. I'll take it or leave it. Right? I'm not like pushing fucking like jobs and like forcing things. I'm just like, okay, we'll do it. And
So what's the solution going forward? So next time that happens, what happens?
I put my top up.
There you go. Roll up the windows, put your top up, pray real quick, and move on with your day.
Lord, keep me from sending you one of your angels.
And lean into the fact that you don't have to justify who you are to other people.
No.
And that's an across-the-board rule, regardless of who it is. It doesn't matter who it is.
Yeah, dude.
Because that's going to happen all the time in life.
It's so weird, right? Like, you know, in all these other aspects of my life with, like, guys that I work with, you know, trying to help them. And, you know, it's like, you tell you, oh, you know, you fucking, like, really help me. Like, you feel good. Like, you're standing on your own 2 feet. Like, my confidence levels are, like, exuding, right? And it takes one varmint. One varmint. Like, that's not cool.
But that's a choice. And that's work for you to work with.
I'm not saying
like,
it's not a choice.
Because I lived that way forever. Like, I reacted to everything. I was a crazy person, do you know what I mean? And all that stuff. But what I know is that today, I don't give my serenity and my peace to anybody. And that doesn't mean that there aren't times that I mess up and I go crazy. Do you know what I mean? Like, ask my kids. They will drive me crazy quicker than anybody. But there's that pause button that I've gotten more used to using, and that I give myself that grace to like breathe and walk out of the house before I snap on my 16-year-old who's giving me attitude one too many times. Because let me tell you, my 16-year-old doesn't know who her mother is. Do you know what I mean? Like, she sees me as this nice Christian, like, I am gangster. Like, we had that conversation the other day. She said something like, you say one more thing to me, I swear to God I will step up to you. And I was like, I will murder you. Like, I was like, you have no idea who I am. And she's like, she's got no fear of me whatsoever. And thank God that I am blessed with children who aren't scared of me. Because had I lived my life the way that I did into their childhood, the way that I used to live, my children would be petrified of me. Do you know what I mean? So that's a blessing. But it's like today, I don't want to be that. And because I do work with so many people, right? Like, I'm super honest and transparent about my life and my fumbles and, like, you know, when I do lose my temper and all of that stuff. And so over time it's become less and less because, quite frankly, I hate apologizing more than anything in the world. And I really live my life, to be totally honest today, not only because I live my life like based on God and all that, but the truth is, more than ever, the reason I actually act right most of the time is because I do not want to apologize for my behavior. So I try to act in accordance with how I do not have to go apologize for especially to people who I don't want to be apologizing to.
It's funny, like my little daughter, the same thing, she would push her mom, and her mom was getting gangster bitch back in the day, dude. And like, and she's like Christian now and everything, but don't think the fuck she didn't put the biscuits to that little motherfucker. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, she tried to step, and mom finally, it comes out, like, you can only poke it so much, right? And I'm just all.
Yeah. Sometimes they don't know. All right, so with that
being said.
Hi,
Vlad.
Hi.
This is interesting.
Right? It's super interesting. So here what we're going to do is we're going to talk about what that path of searching is. And we just talked about our life experiences, right? And that's why Justin and I kind of go through what's been happening with us to just kind of have some kind of idea of like the path of searching and whatever that means for people. And that's that piece of like, how do we find comfort within ourselves, right? And through that path, we use all different types of things. And I think a lot of the things that we learn, we actually learn through experiences, right? And so it's like, for a long time, I talk about all the time that pain used to be my greatest motivator for change. And these days, I really don't want anything to do with pain. I try to live my life so I don't have to have a lot of pain. Yeah. Life happens and has difficulties in its own. Right. And like there's enough pain and suffering that comes with just being human and waking up and breathing. People die, people get diseases, you know, children die. We were talking about that earlier. Like things happen in life that are crazy. But there is a connection that happens. And even in what we were talking about today, right? There's that connection to some kind of piece of the universe, God, whatever we want to call it, that gives us guidance of right and wrong and good and bad. And we have those feelings of like guilt and shame that get triggered when we do things that aren't in alignment with that. And it's finding that pause in that to like know whether the choice we're making is going to be beneficial or detrimental, not only to ourselves, but to others. Right?
Well, it's interesting too, like what you just said, you know, it's like, For me, like, and I just have this epiphany, and it's not an epiphany, but it's like, I think I could put it into words now, right? It's that connection when you feel that grand connection, but it's like the spine of it is like a moral compass.
Yeah.
I think that's the best way to put it into words, right? Like, you feel this huge, like, you go out in the world, sometimes you're just like, wow. Like, for me, sometimes it's out in the ocean. You feel how big the world is, but it's aligned with, like, your moral compass. And I think that, for me, is like the seeking and the searching.
And it's like, how do we align that piece? Do you know what I mean? With our self-will and God's will and the universe and, like, you know
outside
what I mean?
stuff.
And it's really about, like, more than anything else, like, the biggest spiritual experience you can have is differentiating, like, your head from your gut and, like, guiding with that right, wrong, good, bad piece. Yeah. And, like, how do we stay in alignment? And people will trigger us. Things will happen. Kids, homeless, you know, like, situations. Again, like, life happens. You know what I mean? You lose jobs. You have no money. You can't pay rent. You know, things happen. But even in the midst of those storms, it's like, how do we stay peaceful? And I always say serenity is being able to stand in, like, peace and comfort in the midst of the storm. And that comes from some kind of connection, right? And so what we want to talk about here is kind of like what your path to where you are today is. Like, you know, starting from, like, you know, kind of how were you raised, what that looks like throughout your life, like where you're at now. You know what I mean? And kind of what's that, what that brings up for you. We're always like kind of willy-nilly and let's go.
Well, I called Justin actually after his situation, and we had this long conversation, and I take a second to talk about that because it was for me.
Let's talk about you, bro.
No, let's talk about Justin Smith. Let's do this.
You know, everything, you know, that I say, it's something based on my experience, and I was that guy. Mm-hmm. I was that guy. I never really picked a fight, but I like to be in the middle of every fight that I was, and I fought a lot, right? And it's like, and I would like pretend like I'm breaking that up, but I already chose sides. I like to get close to my enemy, you know?
Yeah, totally.
And I was like, hey guys, break it up. Oh! Yeah. And I was that guy, you know, and I was also that homeless guy.
Yeah.
I was that homeless guy too.
Yeah, me too.
That's what broke my fucking heart. I was that fucking homeless guy.
But it's that, like, when you think about it, it's like arguing with somebody in the insane asylum, you know, with a sick individual, and to not initiate it, but to keep going and kind of sort of fall into that, you know, and bite. You bite. You see that juicy worm on the end of that hook, and your old self bites. And I get it, and you know, I remember that saying. First of all, I always have dollar bills, also, you know, and I've given my last $2 to another homeless person because I felt he needed it more than I did at that moment. Mm-hmm. But most of it, you know, my dollar bills, they go to charity, and when she's not working, it's usually Destiny, you know. Yeah, it's not. I have a lot of dad jokes, and it's terrible, but.
Why do Charity and Destiny sound like strippers at the VIP?
Oh, okay. It's not where the dollars are going today. I mean, they may be sometimes.
That was my best dad joke.
Listen, I fully support single mothers. It's like I always tip well, and you know, it's, you know, I still have that kind of like childish attitude to certain lifestyle choices, you know, because I grew up in it. Mm-hmm. And I grew up in it because I raised myself.
Yep.
And for the first 10 years of my life, I was in a different world. I was born in Kiev. I was in Ukraine. I was in one of the safest cities in the world. I was always very independent. I remember 5, 6 years old, I would go take a bus, then a tram, and a metro to the center of the city, and we would go to a museum, and we would just check out the city. It's like 6-year-old. How often do you see a 6-year-old on a bus, right?
Never.
and nobody was shocked because everybody's.
Depends on what part of town.
Well, you know what I mean. But by themselves or with it's like it. You know, it doesn't happen in most parts of the world. And I felt very safe, and I felt very taken care of. My dad, my mom, my grandma. I mean, I was raised by my dad is that guy that brings, love and hard work to the table, and he always encompasses everything, and he brings people in, and he was that guy that was the center of attention because he was incredibly talented, music, writer, artist, top shelf engineer, did design electrical systems in Cuba. He told me, I designed an electrical system for the hospital. I'm like, what year were you in Cuba? And he was like, 62 through 64. And I'm like, hey.
Right after the embargo.
During, right before the missile crisis. And I'm like, right, you were designing the electrical system he was 26 years old, or something like that, 27. And so, very talented individual, but incredibly loving. My mom is a country girl from the outskirts of the city, grew up, milking cows, and, very poor after World War II. My dad was a baby while that was happening, moved to Siberia, and all these things, I really didn't know much about my family. My family really didn't share much about the history of our family. And I couldn't understand why. And, and apparently it was a very difficult subject, and especially after what happened in World War II with the prison camps, a lot of people didn't speak about what religion they were, what their preferences were. They would sometimes just go to church, even if they were Jewish.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They would wear a cross so nobody asked any questions. Mm-hmm. And so only when we left the Soviet Union in '89 did I find out, as political refugees, that my dad's side of the family was Jewish.
And were you raised with any kind of religion?
Just going
to church.
Going to church whenever there was a baptism of my parents' friends, a baby.
Yeah.
So you weren't raised with Judaism?
I was raised, I wasn't raised, my mom and dad, they never pushed any religion. My mom wore a cross, my dad didn't wear anything. And so there was no identification. I only saw my mom having it, but I remember that they really didn't focus on religion much.
Yeah.
Which was odd, knowing now the history, my great-grandfather's history, on my dad's side, one side of the family, another of the family, because it was a really interesting amalgamation, that's the wrong word. It was my great-grandfather, Ilarion, was a bishop in the Russian Orthodox Church.
He has an interesting story, dude.
And
we might have to roll.
Not exactly, not exactly information you might want to withhold from your kids for 27 years. This is when I found out, and it's also, it was one of those things where the discovery of the family past, I had to almost guess at it, because we left, and then 11 years old, we get to the United States, and oh, by the way, you're Jewish also.
You're okay.
Because we landed, and, it was all refugee Russian Jews from Kiev and Odessa and all these Russia, Moscow, St. Petersburg. So I had family everywhere, scattered on my mom's side, but my dad's side of the family was mostly cleared out during World War II. And I could see why it wouldn't be talked about. And when I heard about my great-grandfather, I was my mom showed me a clipping of a news article of 100 of the most powerful people in Soviet Russia. And he was number 72.
That's amazing.
And I heard...
The fact that he made 100. Yeah.
Well, yeah, out of
I don't know if fucking
million.
number 99.
Yeah.
And I was and my dad's yeah, I used to talk about him. And I remember the stories about having this, wonderful, great-grandfather that really loved the people. And he was just loved by the nation. He was in charge of the whole Russian Eastern European bloc.
Mm-hmm.
and he was a delegate from the president to other countries to represent Russian Orthodox Church. You know, he had the big old hat and everything.
Yeah.
And she showed me a picture of him, and I'm like, holy shit, he looks just like me.
With a hat.
Beard
So
and all.
Yeah.
Beard and all, and handsome devil. Just, you know, and it was weird because everybody says I look like my mom, but this was my dad's side of the family.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that's what was happening there. And so I have this all of a sudden, 11 years old, prepubescent kid, thinking like I'm this church-going kid. Now they're telling me, well, let's go to the temple. You know, let's go check it out. My dad and my mom, till my dad's passing, my dad didn't even want to be buried in a Jewish plot. Huh. Yeah, he chose another plot where it was non-denominational.
Yeah.
To him, religion was death. You know, and he just passed about 4 months ago, so I go through, and I go through those ups and downs because they come back at different. Grieving is a very interesting process.
It's not linear at all.
No, it's not linear.
It's not what I learned in college in Psych 101.
No, it's actually because I do grief coaching, and I went through like a whole training program and stuff, and like that was one of the number one things that like got drilled into us is like there's nothing linear about it, and that's all like morning relationships or even jobs or careers or goals and aspirations, like all of that mourning process is the same, and it like comes in waves. Yeah. It's like just allowing them to wash over you because it's hard.
And I honestly I never thought I could. I can go through those experiences and stay sober.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
for me, that was I always had those, like, oh, I know this one, this one, this one.
This happens.
I don't. Yeah. I will not be able to deal with it.
Yeah.
But I was proven wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the first time in my life where I am actually like at peace, and I don't feel like I have to run to other things to fill that God-sized hole.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I felt lately.
And
what? Needing to fill the God side?
That's how I felt like the last couple of weeks when you asked me how am I doing earlier.
Yes.
That's exactly how I felt. Go on.
Yeah, and it's a daily process.
Totally.
You don't carry like those good, serenity feelings to the next day.
No, yesterday does not carry in today.
I wake up, I am ground fucking zero at the starting line, waiting for that gun to go off. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's already off before I even wake up.
Oh yeah, and my head will start loud sometimes in the morning. Like I wake up like already off and like what is happening? But there's that like ability to like restart at any moment. And more than anything though, it's being conscious of it. Do you know what I mean? Like that's the biggest thing is like, it's not even like daily. It's sometimes like throughout the day, like there's moments where like just everything's going wrong, right? Like there's those days where literally from the moment I wake up, everything's sideways. And it's like, it's interesting to watch like how long I will go before literally I'll stop and be like, okay, nothing is working.
That was yesterday.
Restart. Like I'm done. Like everything needs to stop and like I need to readjust. And a lot of times that's happening because things are just going against everything that I think is supposed to be happening, instead of like leaning into what's actually happening or leaning into like what's coming in front of me. Yeah. So, but yeah.
No, I it's one of those things. It's a new thing for me. I've used the tools in the program, to really get in, start discovering who I am, and finding a connection to a God of my understanding.
Yeah. Because
religion to me, like, oh my God, when you're half-breed,
right?
One side tells you, are you in church or Jewish? The other side tells you you're not Jewish.
Right.
Right? And then I'm like stuck in the middle and I feel like I don't belong anywhere. Mm-hmm. And that was a big thing. So my thing in my mind, how do I justify? How do I make myself feel about that? Why do I not fit in anywhere? Mm-hmm. Why do I feel like an outsider, at least from the religious perspective, right? Mm-hmm. And why do I feel when I go to church, I am disgracing my dad's side of the family.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
This internal struggle went on for decades, and I have tried to fill that God-sized hole with, well, initially it was just attention.
Mm-hmm.
Attention and women, sex, then money, drugs, alcohol, everything.
Mm-hmm.
Everything, because I felt empty inside. And the more I felt empty inside, the more I boasted.
Mm-hmm. Totally. That's where that ego and this is where, Justin and I was talking about like the Hodak versus Justin. And like we all have that, where it's like, it's the more insecure I feel and the more like lost I feel and the more disconnected I feel, the more like arrogant and cocky and demanding and dominating
100%.
I become. Like, it's like the bigger I make myself, the less you'll notice how broken I am.
Yeah.
And then the more I healed the brokenness, the quieter I got.
Absolutely.
Like, it's such an interesting.
That's how I tell when I'm not spiritually fit.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I'll make some side comments. I'll get really sarcastic.
Mm-hmm.
I can really mess you up with just some, language.
Totally.
Some words.
Yeah, I'm a ninja with my words. I
Eviscerate.
will break you.
You know what the word eviscerate means?
Go ahead and define it for the group, for the people at home.
Disembowel verbally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Eviscerate.
Yeah, but in order to make myself feel better. But the problem is that on the back end of that, there's so much guilt that comes along. Because that's the thing, is I'm really a nice person. And that's the thing, is like, this is where it gets into that whole, like, what I've done doesn't define who I am. Because the thing is that no matter how, like, hardcore I can be on the outside and, like, project that and make you think it and intimidate everybody around me, there is, like, a little girl inside who doesn't want to be that. Yeah. Like, and I'm not that. And, like, I don't want to hurt people and I don't want to be mean. Like, I really don't. And there's, like, guilt and shame. And then what gets really bad is it turns into this vicious cycle of I need more drugs and sex and money and da-da-da to justify and rationalize to remove the guilt and shame that I feel about how terrible I'm treating people and being, but I'm doing it in order to make myself feel better. And then I'm doing these other things to make that go away. And it just becomes this vicious cycle.
Push, push.
Horrible.
Internal struggle.
Totally. And all just trying to find peace. Because that's all we want.
Yeah. While at the same time creating wreckage.
Non-stop.
Yeah.
Like, just in all self-will all over the place.
Yeah.
And it's like, how do we get that peace without having to act out? And it is true. Like, it's such a barometer of how we're doing spiritually and mentally and emotionally based on how loud and boisterous we are.
That's what I haven't done in a long time.
What?
Created any wreckage.
You just did.
I didn't create any. I walked away from it. I tried to create some wreckage.
I mean, there's going to be a fine line on that one because you created wreckage as soon as you pulled over.
That's okay.
Do you understand what I'm saying? You were out of line the second you went
I was out of line.
Game over.
But
everything that happened from that point on is wreckage.
And everything else, like, I haven't created any wreckage. Like right in front of me wreckage. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not to the full extent.
No.
Where you get to be charged.
Okay, I get it. Hodak's the most unhealthiest one ever out of everybody that's ever lived.
No.
Yeah,
I'm not
that's
even
what we always
that.
go to. That's the go back to.
We're not even giving you that.
Right.
No. However, there is a work in progress that's happening, and there is a lot of change that's going on in you, though. And there has been more recently in the last, let's say, 9 months than there has been in all the time I've known you, which has been since we were in our early 20s.
Yeah,
there's a lot.
We've known each other a long time.
And so that's the biggest thing, though, is that, like, even though a lot of times we talk about, like, your difficulties and your struggles that you're going through, there is more growth and change happening now than there has been in all the years that I've known you. And the thing is that when you're growing and changing, I've always said that, like, the only way you're going to grow and change is by going through these experiences. You know what I mean? So that's the main thing, though. So it's not like, oh, you're so messed up or anything else. It's that as you're changing and growing, this is all going to become more activities that
I don't think anybody ever stops growing and changing.
No, they don't.
You know, I think that's what I was talking with a guy the other day. Is like, you know, for a long time, you're like looking for the finish line, whether it's in recovery or anything like that. Like, okay, if I do these things real quick, I'll get better and I'll be sober and da 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 da. And there's just no finish line.
No.
Like, it's a constant maintenance because life is going to happen and certain events are going to trigger you, and sometimes you lose your fucking shit.
So how did you go? Okay, so we went through all this, right? So like where you're at today, right? And versus like where you were and where you are now, and kind of like what that experience has been like.
Oh my God.
Because it's crazy when you look back too.
It's been a painful experience, like learning, by not reading it in a book, not listening to somebody that has wisdom, but having to learn it on your own skin, experience it, and boy, I caused a lot of damage, and I eventually what it came down to was I was emotionally, psychologically, and physically unavailable, dead, complete zero, flat line on all of those, right? And I was desperate and I was willing enough to make some changes. And, and it was one of those action-based situations.
Yeah.
I had to pay attention to what I was doing. I had to go through a series of, self-discovery, healing, and all these stages eventually, because my disease centers in the mind, I had this shift in perception and perspective, and actually started paying attention to what I was doing, what I was saying. Still not great at that. Sometimes I say some fucked up things without thinking, and that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying not to create more wreckage. I'm trying not to make situations into future amends,
right. And it's interesting that you say that, because one of the things I think that's most important is that awareness, because that's what you were just saying, is it's the awareness of how your actions are going to affect others. Yep. Like, it's not even so much like how my actions are going to affect me, but it's like really coming out of that like selfish place.
Yeah.
Because for a long time, I know for me, I functioned from a super selfish place, right? So everything that I was doing was to make myself feel better. Yeah. I didn't give a shit how it affected you. Like, I just knew what I needed to get in order to make myself feel comfortable. And that like came through whatever it was of what I needed to make that happen, regardless of how that affected you. But it's like having that moment to like realize how my actions are actually affecting others, and how like I'm interconnected to everything that comes in contact with me, and how the things that I was doing was actually affecting other people is like a selfless act, like people,
it's a consideration for others, right?
Yeah.
That's
which is not in our character coming from when you're broken.
Exactly. And you're in a different state of mind too. And to come out of that and to have eventually find, faith. Yeah, that takes some works. It takes an act of God sometimes. And I've had plenty, and, I look back on my life, and, my ex-wife used to say, I was like, yeah, you got 12 lives, 20 lives. How many lives do you have?
Totally.
How lucky have I been?
Yeah.
So, my stepdad always says you're the only guy I know who falls face down in a pile of shit and comes up with a diamond stuck in his tooth.
That's brilliant.
Well, it's funny the amount of lives that we pack into one, because it's interesting, like when I look over my life, there's such different chapters of my life that are so significantly different than the one before that, and it's interesting because I say this all the time, like there's literally not one single thing that I regret going through, because every single experience has brought me to where I am right now.
Absolutely.
But the most painful experiences, what's interesting is my prayer every day is thank you, God, for everything you removed from my life, and thank you for everything you've given me, because really, truly, The painful parts of my life are probably the most beneficial pieces of my life. And they're the pieces that built my character to be who I am today. And without those, I wouldn't have gone through those experiences that now I use to help people and like have given me purpose. And so I always say, like, when people are going through difficult times, like that's where you want to pour in the most gratitude, because those are the experiences that are going to actually be the most beneficial to someone else and to our lives later.
Yeah, and you mentioned gratitude, and and I was never grateful for anything, and that searching to fill that void with money, women, prestige, whatever it was, didn't give me that satisfaction.
Ever. It didn't matter how much money I had, how many people I was sleeping with.
But I didn't believe people who told me that there are plenty of millionaires that commit suicide.
Totally.
There are
all the time.
So many I know.
And I didn't believe it until I was that guy with a gun in my mouth, crying, and having my wife come into the bedroom and catch me with my assault rifle in my mouth. You know, and you don't think you're ever gonna get to that point, right? When I was a young kid, like everybody's like, oh, this guy. I was, fairly smart. I was very proactive. I was very independent, very business oriented. Also, extensive street and criminal background. And I'm also, UCLA graduate on the dean's list.
And mind you, street smarts and book smarts mixed together is lethal.
Yeah.
Especially if you're broken.
Exactly.
Equals a whole lot of problems.
I mean, if you would have asked me, like at 18 years old, going to college, if you would have asked me, I'm like, hey, do you know that in 18 years, you will be sitting in a car, homeless, with no money, unshaven for 6 months, haven't taken a shower in weeks, starving, 80 pounds lighter, trying to get high and stay high, and wanting to die, but not willing to kill yourself.
The most painful place I've ever been was that place where I was just existing. And I went to bed every night wishing I wouldn't wake up, and waking up every morning so angry I had to do it all over again, and knowing I couldn't kill myself, but knowing I couldn't make it any different.
Yeah.
So worse.
Painful.
The jumping off place, dude.
Oh.
And I've tried it. I've been in those moments where the moments kind of aligned, and you got that hot shot, and the plunger halfway down, and you're already falling out, and like, this is the time, and you push through it, and you just took a lethal dose, and then you wake up. You wake up.
Have to do it all over again.
You wake up, and there's a fire department around you. They're breaking the side of your windshield. I have woken up by the fire department a few times, pulled out of the car, escaped before the cops got there, and thank God I didn't kill anybody.
Oh.
I've been parked on the street, key out of the engine, park, decided to take a nap after a big hit, and the next thing I know, I wake up and the guy's screaming next to me. It's a gardener. He's got his phone out. He's recording. And I'm looking. I'm like, where the fuck am I? Because I'm looking kind of at the sky, and my car is sitting on a bed truck, on the bed of a truck that was about 50 yards away from my car. And thank God that truck was there, because apparently while I was nodded out, I started the car, put it in drive. The guy said I was gassing it. There's a video that was sent to the insurance company, and I just took off straight. I popped the curb right next to the truck, and my car went vertical a little bit, and I landed on the bed. Not all the way on the land of the front of my car was sitting on top of the bumper, and I had no idea what happened. That happened twice to me. When you fall asleep, you don't expect to wake up somewhere, especially when you did it and you had no idea you did it.
So here's what I was just thinking about too, because I'm a big blackout drinker. I black out for days at a time, right? And my morning routine would be wake up and walk around my car if it was there. Otherwise, I'd have to walk multiple bars with my kids to go find my car and do that walk around. But what I always remember was the guilt of the next morning and that fear that hits, right? Like when you come to or you wake up, that's always the interesting part, because even though during those periods of my life, I was really living in that like self-will, you know, just trying to consume everything and anything that I needed, but I remember the like guilt and shame and the fear of that waking up. And then like once you assess everything's okay, then it's like, all right, and then like you go back to just your normal life and 1-2 drinks or 1-2 hits or whatever it is, like we're good again. But like those moments throughout there, those are horrific feelings.
It's a very strange feeling. Thinking to yourself, if I wasn't conscious, if I wasn't aware, if I was in a blackout, which I was plenty of times, who was driving?
Totally.
How did I get home?
Jesus, take the wheel.
Right?
Those are those moments, right? Like that experience was something we had to go through for whatever reason. And to have a belief system today where I know to the core of my being that I should be dead. And many people around me should be dead,
100%.
right?
10 times over.
I mean, I shot lethal amounts of dope. Like I fell out numerous times. Do you know what I mean? And I will never understand why some people die and some people don't. Do you know what I mean? Like I have no idea.
I've seen thoroughbred dudes, like exceptional physical, just like beasts in a gym, just like healthy eaters, everything, know, trimmed, 12-pack, take a dose and die.
Instantaneously.
Saying
like, much better people than
like,
me
I'm a
have
beast.
died.
Yeah.
For nothing. Do you know what I mean? Like walking down the street, had a heart attack and died. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's crazy situations, and like the only thing that I do know, and I love the way that you just put that, you know what I mean? Because it really is like, who else was driving the car? And not to say that I'm any better and I deserve to be here, because I really don't know what the purpose is. I don't. I know that the way that I live my life today is that I know that I'm here because I'm supposed to be. Do you know what I mean? Do I always understand why or what I'm supposed to be doing here? No. I have a faith today that I believe guides me with that instinct of right and wrong and good and bad. I know that I continue to do the work that I need to do in order to go to bed at night comfortable and to feel peace in my soul, and like try to be loving and kind to everything and anything that comes in contact with me, because every day is a gift and I don't deserve to be here. And even where I am today right now and the way I live my life, I'm not confused that I have no right to be here. Do you know what I mean? Like it's such a blessing living the lives that we've lived. To even be here, you know what I mean, is insane. And it's like, how do you know what I mean? Like it's one of those things, like when you really embrace the fact that like it's such a gift to just wake up and breathe. Like that's simple. Like if I'm just breathing, I have choices. If I'm just breathing, there's a chance. And I think that's the most instilling thing in me, is like when all this shit goes sideways, right? You total the car, I don't have rent money, you know what I mean? You lose a job, someone dies, things happen in life. But like as long as we're breathing, there's options. And I know that for me, as long as I'm sober, I have options, because I have a choice. Yeah, I know that as soon as I start drinking or using or doing any of that stuff, like all my choices go out the window and I'm owned by that. Like it's just the way it is in my life. And like having some kind of connection to God and like guiding myself, with that internal connection and like aligning those parts that we were talking about when we first started this is like the most important thing, to just have that peace and to fill that God-sized hole. Like that's amazing to be able to walk in that. And it's so interesting that it really just comes down to acting right. Do you know what I mean? And like making good choices and like having that pause.
Still make terrible choices.
Totally.
But you mentioned that pause, and that pause is important.
Yeah, and it's like again, it's a muscle, right? So it's like, how do we just continue to just do that? And when you make mistakes and you mess up and you start fights and you snap your shit or you lose it on something, whatever it is, or you steal something or you lie. Because like the thing is, I say this all the time, I wish just one day I decided I was going to follow Jesus and I was going to start this life and all my character defects would vanish, and all my insecurities, and all my fears, and all my gangsterisms, you know, and all of my stuff would just fall. And that's like just not my experience, you know? My experience is that every day is a day that I am trying to make good choices.
Yeah.
And the only real difference today between what it used to be like and what it's like now is that I do have solutions. I have a lot more experiences of what it feels like to do the right thing, so I do fall to sleep, you know, comfortable, and that I know that every day I want to go to bed at night comfortable. And I know the only way to do that is to align those pieces of myself, to get clear on what's right and wrong, right? And live along that path to the best of my ability. And when I fall off that path, be honest about it, you know, make the apologies when I need to, make the corrections,
That's
and learn
that spiritual
from it.
toolkit, right? That you get to use to make things right and to sort of stay on the path, right?
Yeah.
But like I have taken so many paths, and
Totally.
and I am, because I am selfish and self-centered by nature, I'm also defiant.
Totally.
You know, I go left when they tell me you should go right.
Totally.
Just because.
And like I said, a long time, I used to do it just because. Just on principle.
I'll get there before you, bro.
You
Don't
say
worry
left,
about
I'm going right. Yeah. We're going to see. And I'm down to pay the consequences.
And usually I'm wrong.
Well, and with that being said,
Are we out?
We're an hour in, dude.
All right.
I mean, I could keep going, but fucking, we're an hour in, which is rare.
All right, so with that
being said, I mean, unless you, there was a time that I wanted to be like, and with that, because you had some pearls going, right? And like right now, it's kind of on a joking note. Like you had a mic dropper, but now I can't take us back. So it's up to you.
So with that, thank you so much for being on.
Yeah, thank you for coming
Thank
out,
you
bro.
for
That was like
inviting
fucking
me.
great.
This was a nice experience.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks
You did
everyone for
great.
being here.
Thank
See you
you,
next
everybody.
time.
Bye.
Bye.